Hey everyone, my name is Tim and welcome to my channel where I'll be discussing pretty much anything that happens to be on my mind that day. With a journalism degree from Endicott College and TV and radio experience from the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, it'll be fun to put all my education together on a project like this. This will definitely evolve and get better, especially over the next little while as I get used to making these videos, and I'm excited to find out where this project is headed. I want to talk today about a discussion question asked by John Green at the end of his novel, Looking for Alaska. He asked the reader, do you like Alaska? Is it important to like a character that you read about? It's a really interesting question because we read and watch TV and movies in order to enjoy our leisure time. But there's something more important than just enjoying a character, and that's feeling emotions from a character. One of the things that makes Alaska such a remarkable character is that you don't always like her. She can try to inspire Pudge one minute and be cold and distant towards him the next. Extremely intelligent, but just as impulsive and selfish, she can teach you about life and have you shaking your head at the same time. Her good and bad qualities offset, so you're never really sure what to think about her. But in the end, you learn to sympathize with her once you find out what happened in her past that makes her the way she is. And even in death, she manages to engage the emotions of both her friends and the reader. Sometimes my favorite characters to read just aren't likable some of the times. In fact, they can be pretty abhorrent throughout, with the Harry Potter series being my favorite example of enjoying loathsome characters. With the three main characters, you have the classic hero, the lovable loyal best friend, and the hard worker with superior intellect who is also secretly a badass, and it is so much fun to be with them as they grow up together, especially Harry and Hermione, who only found out this world existed right before first year began. But it's the villains who really take this series to another level. Of course you hate Draco, and your blood pressure rises just a little bit every time the despicable little weasel's name appears, but that only makes you want to read on. You feel a snarl on your face every time he threatens to go to his father, but once you learn that, like Alaska, he is the way he is due to his upbringing and events that are out of his control, you ultimately empathize with him in the end. What makes him such a great read is the range of emotions you feel reading about him, as he's built up one way and then everything changes like a sudden drop on a roller coaster and you see him in an entirely new light. And does anybody make your skin crawl more than Dolores Umbridge? Personally, I've had to put the book down for a few minutes and walk around in order to calm down, and when I reread the series I see smudges in the text from when I had a white-knuckle grip on it, in part because I was filled with so much hatred, and it was to keep myself from throwing it across the room. Whether it's her condescending tone, torturous punishments, or her dividing an already fractured Hogwarts by recruiting Slytherins into the Inquisitorial Squad, she is clearly a pure villain who, unlike Draco or Professor Snape, has no redeeming backstory that can make you feel sorry for her, and yet there may be no character that makes you turn the pages of this series faster. There are just as many characters in Harry Potter you don't like as those you do, from the very beginning with the Dursleys who abuse Harry his whole life, all the way to Lord and Bellatrix Lestrange. You go through such a range of emotions during the series you can actually get exhausted just from lying down reading, which is why Harry Potter is the best-selling series of all time by over 100 million. It's those characters, even more so than our heroes, who turn this from a book into an adventure that will stay with you. Now, villains keeping you engrossed in the story is definitely not limited to literature. Just look at the work of Quentin Tarantino, whose filmography is littered with characters you're not supposed to like, many of whom happen to be the primary protagonist in his movies. Reservoir Dogs is populated almost entirely by villains, though some are certainly worse than others. I'm looking at you, Mr. Blonde.
What? What's the matter?
Some try to show on throughout the film, as Mr. White always tries to do right by his fellow thieves, but after standing up for Mr. Orange, aka Freddie Newendike, the undercover cop, he kills him as soon as he learns his true identity. The Tarantino universe is full of characters you enjoy watching, even if they're not exactly likable. There's Vincent Vega and Jules Winfield, the wannabe cultured and religious awakened hitmen from Pulp Fiction, Bill and the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad from Kill Bill, and Django Unchained's Calvin Candie. Of course, they all have varying degrees of likability, but you don't even want to blink when Candie explains the science of pharaohology to Django and Dr. Schultz. Then, of course, there's Tarantino's ultimate villain, the character who is so vile in every scene, and yet you can't help but be enamored by him, the one and only Colonel Hans Landa.
Ooh, that's a bingo!
There's no question he is evil. You may wish to lay vengeance upon someone with Jules and Vincent, but nobody wants to be on the side of the Jew hunter. You recognize his intelligence and his charm, and his sarcastic, witty sense of humor makes you want to grab a drink with him, before snapping back into reality, remembering that he is a Nazi hell-bent on finding every last person of Jewish descent in Nazi-occupied France. And at the end we find out that it's only a job, as he doesn't have any particular prejudice against the Jews he hunts, and he doesn't hesitate to help the bastards with their plan of assassinating Hitler in exchange for immunity and American citizenship. Cunning, charismatic, crafty, usually appalling, sometimes loyal, you're never really sure what to think about him, except he is one of the most captivating personalities to ever appear in any medium of popular culture. Orange is the New Black Season 2 had one of my favorite television antagonists in recent memory in V. I was seething every moment she was on screen, which was the main reason I had to marathon the entire thing in just one sitting. Extremely manipulative, there are few characters I could think of who can instantly figure out another's weakness and use that information to find the perfect way of controlling them. She tore apart friendships, notably Tasty and Poussey, after luring Tasty back into the drug-selling business that got her locked up at Litchfield to begin with. And of course, no matter what anyone does for her, she only sees them as pawns, as there is no hesitation to throw Crazy Eyes, her most loyal follower at Litchfield, under the bus for V's attack on Red. There's not a single redeeming quality about her, but she pushes the story along better than any character yet in the run of the show and is easily one of my favorite prisoners. Fictional worlds are filled with such characters, ones you hate but you keep coming back to because they're impossible to stay away from. There's the sheer brutality of Alex DeLarge, the meticulous madness of Dr. Lecter, the unstoppable and remorseless Anton Chigurh, and the controlling Nurse Ratched. Pennywise gave an entire generation a fear of clowns. Annie Wilkes took fangirling to an entirely new level, and the Joker was, is, and always will be an agent of pure chaos. Max Cady was obsessed with revenge. Joffrey Baratheon was a vicious, spoiled brat, and Patrick Bateman was, well, a psycho. There's not a single one of these characters you like, and yet they have become iconic, and the history of literature and film just wouldn't be the same without them. The original question is posed about Alaska, and while she's not evil like some of the other characters I have mentioned here, it's clear that a character does not have to be likable all the time or even at all. But if they can keep a reader or a viewer engrossed in the story, and it's not uncommon they do so better than the protagonist, then that is what is important in a character.